Well, recently celebrated my birthday, so getting older. Uh, and family is hoping I get wiser, so coming along.
People who have come from engineering, product, researchers, right? They have brought in their own perspective. You have often been on the other side of the table. As an investor, as an operator, whose work is about, in a way, predicting future, right? What is likely to most happen in the future.
I think AI is like Linux, or more importantly, for the common man, it's like the internet. You know, and quantum is like the mobile internet. So internet exploded onto the scene, and then mobile created a mega explosion beyond that, right? So that's what AI and quantum are going to do. They are a part. They are a part of the day-to-day fabric of life. That's what it's going to become.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pragmatic AI, a podcast where we dive deep into the real stories from the AI trenches, speaking with luminaries from the global AI ecosystem. You might be wondering why and is a podcast with a focus on AI. Our goal is simple to bring authenticity to the AI conversations and cut through the hype. Each episode will feature industry leaders from founders, VCs, to AI leaders and academics who have been building AI systems and ventures for 10, 15, 20, and many more years. These are people who have lived through multiple AI hype cycles and have better scars to show. I am your host, Anuj Gupta. I'm a seasoned AI advisor and mentor. With 20 years of experience in AI, I have transformed startups and Fortune 50 companies, driving billion-dollar outcomes, including funding rounds, acquisitions, and IPO. Recently, one of the AI systems that I mentored was demoed to Sam Altman and Vinod Khosla. I have also co-authored a landmark book in AI, globally influencing both academia and the tech leadership. Join us as we explore the pragmatic side of AI, where the real stories are Please told. Join me in welcoming Ranjeet. Ranjeet is a deep tech angel investor, inventor, operator, and a partner at YourNest venture capital firm. Over the past 28 years, he has been through seven successful startup acquisitions across US and India. He is a two-time founder, has bootstrapped an additional two India operations for startups, now valued at 150 million and 300 million dollars respectively, and holds two US patents. You can find more about him on his LinkedIn. Welcome to the podcast, Ranjit. It's a pleasure having you.
Hey Ranjit, how have you been?
Hey, I'm good. How have you been, Anuj?
I've been doing very well. Can't ask better. Uh, and anything exciting?
Well, recently celebrated my birthday, so getting older. Uh, and family is hoping I get wiser, so coming along.
Congratulations. Uh, so I thought I will take your time, Ranjit, and the idea of this podcast is to bring out aspects of AI, bring out a more realistic view of AI, right? You have been a VC and an operator. So prior to this, we have had people who have come from engineering, product, researchers, right? They have brought in their own perspective. You have often been on the other side of the table, and I thought this will be a great opportunity to understand AI, look at AI from your point of view. And I know you are somebody who is known to have a point of view, right? And nothing better than that for a podcast.
Thank you.
So the world is changing fast, Ranjit, right? I mean, over the weekend we just saw Optimus Prime, SpaceX catching its boosters, right? We have already seen that in last 2 years, AI has become a household word, right? Quantum maybe another 1 year to 3 years down the line, right? As an investor, as an operator, whose work is about, in a way, predicting future, right? What is likely to most happen in the future, and then bet accordingly. What does all of this mean for a business, organizations, governments, and maybe even mankind?
Got it. No, I think the questions are very good. I think it is a broad impact. I think AI is like Linux, or more importantly, for the common man, it's like the internet, and quantum is like the mobile internet. So internet exploded onto the scene, and then mobile created a mega explosion beyond that, right? So that's what AI and quantum are going to do. They're a part of the day-to-day fabric of life. That's what it's going to become. Imagine a world without mobiles and without internet, right? So that's the world we are living in without AI, without quantum. Okay. So imagine how much it's going to change. I think that's what we're going to embrace, whether we like it or not. To some extent, we like it. To some extent, we won't. And the impact on, I think, businesses is very simple. Businesses will be able to leverage AI to be leaner. They maybe each business will expand into multiple verticals that they couldn't do earlier because they couldn't afford it. They're going to have leaner workflows, lower operating costs, and they're going to have, the budgets will get trimmed, right? So the flip side of that is, what happens to governments that have to deal with citizens, right? Citizens who may lose their jobs, right? So, work may reduce, and so people need to still earn money, or the concept of money might change to some extent, because now you can't just go out and get work. There's AI doing it. And that's where universal basic income might come in. And quite a few billionaires, in some sense, support it because they see that without universal basic income, there's more social and unrest that's going to come down the line, right? Then AI at a government level, there's sovereign AI to do, mundane tasks, like taxation, road quality, citizen services, right? Important but mundane. And then there's like strategic sovereign functions like foreign exchange, commodities, wars, trade wars, things like that, right? So AI is going to play an augmentation role out there, helping humans take decisions. I don't think AI is going to take all the decisions by themselves because that can be a little runaway, right? We don't know yet what can be done. But anyway, so moving on from governments and businesses, right? When you come to mankind, in a way, yeah, people might lose their job, but you'll have universal basic income. So you'll have a lot of freedoms. And then the question with that kind of freedom is, what are you going to do? I mean, do you really want that kind of freedom? Is our social framework set up for that, right? Can politicians deal with citizens, a million voters who are free to come to town hall every day and sit there from 12 to 4? Okay. Can police deal with citizens who say, yeah, I have all the time in the world, I'm going to sit in the police station and figure out whether you guys are working or, I mean, I'm just picking on some sets of people, but, you tell friends, hey, I can't, I have a deadline to meet. And now, you don't have a deadline to meet. So, literally every social framework is going to get, go and undergo stress because it's going to change the way we use our time, right? I think that's the big shift that I see.
Does this scare you more or excite you more?
It scares me not because people will lose the job, but because there'll be many people who don't know what to do with their time. An idle mind is a devil's workshop, right? So that is what scares me, not the loss of work itself, because that can be, replaced by income, but income's not going to make somebody. So we have to realign people, not reskill, but realign to leverage that time. And I don't know what the solution of that is.
Okay. I recently read, right, and it's becoming more and more clear. These are not just technological shifts. We have had multiple technological shifts, but even internet impacted our lives, but not so much. This is going to be step change in the way I think the mankind operates itself, right? And we are far from ready for it. I mean, that is for sure on multiple levels. So interesting times to see. Talking of the organizations, do you believe, like, one of the things that has come out in the last 2 years since the advent of ChatGPT, and I'm using that because that was a key catalyst, right? Before every business leader started to talk of AI. Do you believe that AI have truly impacted enterprises? Has the adoption been slow? And if yes, why?
Yeah, I think an enterprise has many parts, right? So the technical verticals within an enterprise. So the adoption is there, but it's on the experimentation side. It's on the early adoption side. I don't think it's deployed into production, and I don't think there's a commercial ROI. I mean, we don't even have a technical ROI as such, or even a headcount ROI. It's not very clear, right? So adoption, if you're looking for adoption, it's there. If you're looking for production deployment, that's very much smaller. I think that's what it is. But having said that, what I would say is, AI is going to go through multiple inflection points, right? And so we are at the first inflection point. I think it's going to get adopted, and it's going to be like the J curve that, as an investor, you're looking for, right? So that hockey stick or J curve is what you're looking for. So yes, it is slow. Absolutely right. But I think given how ubiquitous it is, and we've seen this before with, the internet, with mobile, right? Even, Linux is going to be the desktop of the year. Well, Android is a form of Linux. Apple is a form of Unix. Most of the servers in the backend, a huge bunch of them are running Linux. So these hockey stick adoptions are what are going to happen, is the expectation, right? And so adoption will pick up, definitely.
Interesting. But when you talk of this J curve, right? One of the differences AI has as opposed to typical software is that towards the end, where you are looking at 100% automation, right? The curve doesn't hit that, right? It starts to taper very quickly. So if you look at Tesla today, right? Tesla is not 100% autonomous. It is almost there, but not yet. There is a gap between where they are today. And it's a well-known fact among researchers that AI lives in these long tail of edge cases, right? And as your models become better, rather than improving the systems, counterintuitively, the effort needed to improve it by a delta goes exponentially higher, right? So the curve starts to flatten because of that whole thing, right? Until we hit AGI, how do you think this part is going to play out?
Until we hit AGI, I think, for instance, we're already seeing it, right? So we started off with machine learning. I'll consider machine learning as the pre-LLM, so to speak, right? Okay. And then we got LLMs, and then we got multimodal LLMs, right? So we went from text, which is what LLMs did. Then we went to multimodal, which is, multiple modes, for the viewers, right? The multimodal means we consume audio, video, images, and text, right? And we also produce them. But then there's reasoning. So then there's a new vertical of models. Then there's action models, right? So I think every time there's a gap that opens up, there'll be some sort of a large area of models that will be created that fulfills that need. And, it's actually, if you think about it, at least for me, I think the LLMs plus the reasoning models plus the action models are what I would build a robo out of, because the LLMs understand the environment that you're in. The reasoning helps you compute with that, and the action allows you to interact physically, in an IoT manner, so to speak. So whether it's a 3D printer as an output, whether it's a sensor as an input, that drives the actions. So I think that's how the area will keep growing. As we find flaws, as we find gaps, we will realize that one size doesn't fit all, and we have to come up with something different in an adjacency. But the sum of the parts will probably show us the way towards AGI, is what I feel. Right?
You believe that the winter is not coming, unlike previously?
No. So no, I don't think. So some of the architectures might die. Okay. But I think I believe it will be a collaborative growth. So at a technical level, architectures might change, architectures might die, but it's not that AI will take over the world. I think, I'll touch upon that topic a little later.
Sure.
But I think it will be collaborative. It is up to us to rein the AI in. I mean, of course, you don't need AI for something to go berserk, right? I mean, if I deployed a tank at a border and just, started shooting, or rather rigged the tank to start shooting, you could cause mayhem without requiring AI, right? It's when you give up control to the wrong party that you have problems, right? So I gave a graphic example just to highlight it. So it's up to us to have AI like fire, as something that we control and not something that is controlling us, right? So I think that's up to us.
While it is very early days, right? And like you said, haven't even seen the technical ROI, right? Business ROI is far from it, right? Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think a lot of companies are struggling to see ROI? And one of the indicators that I have seen is that a lot more people are now leaving companies, either starting on their own, of course, because there's a great opportunity, or even becoming a consultant, because they believe that what all is needed in order to do AI, companies are not able to do it. While as an individual, they will have that freedom, right? Because they understand that this whole process is there. Why do you think, in your opinion, what is your point of view on why the ROI is still kind of missing? Even early signs of it.
Okay. So ROI, see, the human is the expert, okay? Even with today's current AI, right? So if the human is the expert, the AI cannot read the mind of the human, right? Well, at least not today. I mean, I know the Japanese have found a way to capture the dreaming and replay the dream, so we're not too far off. But the AI cannot determine, automatically what the human wants to do. I think at least where AI is today, the ROI has to still come from the inputs of the human. The AI will take you there faster, better, leaner in a variety of ways. But as it exists today, it cannot think independently, right? It doesn't have original thought, and so it has to be shaped and guided by the human. So contrary to the expectation that AI will solve our problems, we will solve our problems with the use of AI. I think that's probably a better way to do it. And so then coming to the ROI, if the corporates, the enterprises are expecting that AI will solve their problem, well, then that's the wrong expectation, right? It's the human who is an expert at business and who is an expert at AI that can leverage the AI to guide the business. So imagine that you are a sailor in a boat, okay? And you've installed AI on your computer. The AI is not going to trim the sails, okay? But you are still going to trim the sails, but the AI will help you navigate the waters better, navigate the wind better. In addition to your expertise of how to sail the boat, the AI will help you understand and navigate the landscape in ways that one human cannot, because it can obviously learn faster, react better. But in the end, whether you want to go east or you want to go west is something that only you can decide. Sure, you can punch it in, but halfway through, if you want to go north, AI cannot figure that out, right? So in the end, what I'm saying is, what a business wants to do, the humans at the top have to be AI savvy. They have to be AI friendly, and they need somebody who can take them along that journey, either themselves or somebody that they bring in. I think that's the way to get ROI. Right?
As a VC, I'm sure you would come across lots and lots of crazy ideas, right? At the same time, a lot of run-of-the-mill ideas. If you were to build a company today, what are some of the ideas you're most likely to work on, and why?
Got it. So there are two aspects. One is a progressive vision of the world, and one is a regressive vision of the world, right? So I'll talk about the regressive vision first. So the way AI is empowered, right? It knows everything about you. It can mimic your voice. You pick up a phone, you say, hello, who's there? Who's it? That's it. 3 seconds of speech is enough to replicate your voice, right? So I think that's a very regressive world that we can, end up with. And so military specification cybersecurity that uses AI on your side to protect you from standard attacks, is probably one idea that will work out very well. Because today, there's a survey about companies and executives losing faith in IT people or IT departments, I should say. A part of that comes from the fact that you literally cannot lock down networks anymore, right? It's almost impossible to guarantee that, right? And so if you cannot lock down networks and data is flowing freely, and that information can be used in a very negative way, to misrepresent you, to steal. If you have the same password on your bank as you have on your, email and on maybe something else, right? Or maybe on your Netflix. So those are the problems. So if there's a breach in one area now, you're exposed at multiple sites. It's a very complicated world for the average man or woman, right? And I think that's one area where using AI on this side would be a nice thing. On the side of of the common person, right? Not on the side of the state actors or the non-state actors who are attacking the ecosystems. So that's one idea. I think another would be, you have a human being, and then you have a digital identity or a version or a twin of the human being, and then you augment that digital version with AI. Somebody's released something recently, I forgot, Heyday or some, I forget the name, where your avatars, and these are AI avatars, they don't just look like you, they behave like you. They will attend meetings, they will work in those meetings as if it's you. So like, Dr. Manhattan or, in Doctor Strange, splitting into multiple entities. I mean, that's literally what we're seeing, right? So you will have your digital avatars being in these meetings and talking, right? So your digital CEO is talking to your digital CFO, and taking decisions and coming back to you and saying, hey, this is what we decided. I mean, that's insane, right? So on a positive side, I mean, these are the things that can free you up. You decide the direction and you keep fiddling with what you want to do next, but the work will be done by these entities, right? So I think that's on the progressive side. Some may not look at it as progressive, but for the sake of argument, let's call that progressive, right? So,
Sure. Okay. What would that mean? So until now, internet has played a huge part in our life as a knowledge base. Now, one of the things that we have start seeing is with coming of machines, the content on internet is getting polluted because this is not necessarily true. So till now, I would say the default mode would be to trust what is there on the net, maybe have a little question mark around it. Do you think we will end up on the other end of the spectrum where the default nature is not to trust what is there on the internet because anything can be any of this? And what would
absolutely. In fact, yeah. No, absolutely. Sorry.
I mean, I'm just trying to ask, what would then mean? Because that's the fundamental premise of internet. Of course, other than connecting all of us and providing that highway to talk to each other and connect, but that information repository aspect, where would that go?
Yeah. So, so I would point to the banking, for instance, right? If you take the banks, okay, we trust our banking on the browsers and we say it is secured by HTTPS, okay? But actually, the underlying certificates that help you secure that are embedded in your browser. So when you download the browser, it comes with, I don't know, Bank of America, Bank of India, all of these banks, they have their certificates signed by a certificate authority. And that certificate authority is embedded in your browser, right? So what I'm saying is that when we had only HTTP, we had to invent something and we had to retool the entire tool chain all the way to the browser to force this into the conversation, right? Similarly, we can have, the blockchain related aspects, for instance, to make sure. So we could identify, hey, these 25 blockchains are legitimate blockchains, and we could have layers of trust in blockchain, that if I start at this block, so a blockchain today is a chain of blocks, but it can also be a tree of blocks, for instance, right? So we could start with a tree of blocks starting at for instance, the Ministry of Education is one tree of, one starting point. We could have another that is starting with the IITs, a third set that's starting with Stanford, MIT, USC, what have you, right? And these are legitimate, well-known authorities of information, right? And so I wouldn't trust a government source for every piece of news, okay? And I wouldn't trust the university source when it comes to an article that says our university is the best resource for learning, because it could be biased, right? But in general, these are well-regarded authorities of neutrality or information. So we could build a network like that by embedding into our browser, saying, this is kind of a web of trust. And if you go outside this, you could have a problem. So I agree that data. So there are two problems. One is, from an AI perspective, data is being synthesized and fed into the AI, which is a separate problem.
Yeah.
But the other is what you're talking about, which is a malicious fake data.
Yeah.
And yes, we have to go away from a sense of light trust to deep distrust. I think we are headed in that direction because, OTP, right? I have, created scenarios, operational items around OTP where I just don't discuss my OTPs with anyone, right? I mean, typically people are used in India to, when you're running companies, sir, I need this OTP, I need that OTP. I'm like, if you don't call within this 30-minute, 20-minute time in the entire month, I give one person only a 20-minute time to call me for an OTP, okay? Which means the window for somebody to guess when to call me and fake an OTP is almost down to zero, right? So that is deep distrust, okay? It's my own vendor, right? But it's a deep distrust because an OTP could mean I'm taking delivery of a toothbrush from Amazon, or an OTP could mean that somebody's transferring 50 crores out of, not that I have, but out of my corporate account, right? So those are the dangers, right? And so we have to isolate ourselves. And if we can have tools, I think that's one area where, like you were talking about, what are the companies to build, cybersecurity and all of that. I think that's one area. So, for instance, in AI, at the very top, there are AI applications. The moat is very low, right? Anyone can recreate what you create. So it requires very little money, but also the entry barriers are very low. You can make some money out there. LLMs require very deep pockets, billions of dollars at times. But it's a deep moat if you are going down that road. The revenues are very strong as well in some cases. If you go to the cloud, and that's where, what you're talking about, like protecting the data privacy and all. If you can build the right block trees, I would call them, rather than a blockchain, so to speak, then you require deep pockets to build clouds, but it's a well-known thing. But if you offer privacy, for instance, now suddenly you've got a moat that helps everybody who's a legitimate player and works against the interests of the malicious players, right? And there's a lot of money to be made out there. Hardware, I would say, unless you're into designing AI. So those are the four layers, right? Hardware at the bottom. Above that is the cloud and data privacy, data residency. Above that is the LLM that's powering all of this basic data that's available and enriching, making it into oil, so to speak. And then the apps that use that oil, right? So I think those are the various areas that people could actually work in, and that we would need. More than what people should do is what we would need as a country, as an economy, as an ecosystem. I hope that answers what you're looking for.
So chances that AGI will happen today are more likely to be yes as opposed to no. Maybe it will take 5, 10, 15 years. Tough to predict how much, but the chances that we'll get to very close to it. Do you think that the current tech will lead to AGI? And if not, what are some of the fundamental innovations that we will have to do as a precursor, as a prelude, that will act as a building blocks towards AGI?
Got it. So there's a few things, right? Like number one, we don't really know how we think. Like, yes, we do to some extent. We know, oh, this part of the brain lights up, and that. So we are at the Diwali lights part of understanding the brain, right? We know what lights up, what doesn't, right? And I'm sure there are experts who understand much deeper, uh, right? But we are at that level, so we don't understand the science fully end to end, so to speak. Second, especially with respect to original thought, right? Creativity, those aspects, right? Um, the second thing is the energy efficiency. The brain uses 20% of the human body's energy, but it is still vastly efficient in terms of storage, retrieval, joining the dots, creativity, all of these aspects. Uh, we don't have a right understanding, so to say. At least, I think maybe the medical folks who are deep into it do, but at least, the layman or even the scientifically oriented don't, right? And so that's one thing, one thought to keep in mind, right? So then there's, of course, AGI, which is trying to achieve what the human can do, uh, but with computers, right? So now what we have are computers that are very inefficient. Okay, I think they're fantastic, what they can do, but the energy consumption is extremely high. It is completely out of whack, right? So what do we need? We need miniaturization. Okay, for miniaturization, we need like 1,000,000 times more efficient compute capacities. Okay, we probably need at least 1,000 times more efficient energy utilization. Okay, I think that's, and those aspects are, the compute part is somewhat easier, and again, somewhat, I'm sure there are scientists and technologists working on this who will say, no, it's not somewhat easier, it's very hard. But the energy is like a physical limit that we don't yet fully know how to achieve that that breakthrough, right? Current architectures, I think, will fail. I don't think they all have their limitations. Transformers, for instance, there's a new approach to LSTMs called XLSTM that is cheaper, faster to achieve certain outcomes. Silicon photonics, optical computing, and carbon nanotube, data processing units are probably the future to achieve the next level of energy, size, and compute efficiencies. I think so. We would be happy to invest in those, for instance, but we do need to see something that's investable, right? And then we've been with LLMs for some time now. Now LRMs are coming out, so there will always be these advances that happen. I think those are the facets that we need to get the compute aspect out there. But again, the data aspect is still very gray. So that's what I'd say.
But you largely believe this extension of the GPU way of compute, whatever those machines will be called, is what will lead to AGI, and maybe not an attempt like Neuralink, with the idea of not to create a brain, but use an existing brain with a kind of a plug and play socket. So like how you plug a bus into a socket and get it up and running. So this one was an idea that one of my professors in one of the lectures back in 2007 had raised. Why is mankind trying to create human brains? Why can't we get to a point where the brains can have some kind of a pin slot? Because this is already the most efficient machine as we have known it. If we can just keep it alive, keep the lights on in it, and have a USB plug kind of a thing to it, then creating AGI is far more easier. And when I first heard Neuralink, to me that lecture came back immediately. That this is exactly what I meant. Don't you think something like that might be a far more easier path? In some ways.
Yeah. So no, I agree. So
hard word here, but
no. Correct. No. So as an investor, we have to keep an open mind all the time, right? So you're absolutely right that an alternative path might be the better way forward. I actually don't know. But at least the path that we are on with respect to AI, machine learning and statistical driven number crunching AI is reaching a certain level at a speed that others are not able to catch up with, right? If Neuralink or that approach has to succeed, What we need is multiple people going down that path and experimenting, right? And that's where it gets very dangerous, because you're actually experimenting with a real live human, and so that is ethically also a little problematic for us from a funding perspective. For instance, I mean, it's very standard, right? By law and by covenant with our LPs, right? We are required to not invest in certain areas. And so for us, honestly, this is it's that's a problem. But I don't think the area itself is problematic or not going to succeed. As an investor, I fully agree that it can easily lead to a better outcome, uh, but I don't think it is scalable. In a sense, even if all the humans were connected, you are still limited to your capacity of one brain. Okay. What I would like to see, so independent of the pathway, whether Neuralink or whether it's AI, AGI, what I would like to see is an augmentation mechanism that allows me to expand my memory, my recall, my thinking capacity, my elevate my thinking in some sense. And then I don't actually care how that comes about, right? Right now, to me, it seems AI is the simpler way forward. Even if it's inefficient, number crunching, dehumanizing to some extent the human brain by making it, a bunch of GPUs, right? That have to be water cooled. Yes, I agree. But that's what we have, unfortunately, and that's the best that we have. But if we don't go down that road, we won't know where that road ends or where that road leads, right?
So if you look at all the AI today, right, this is more of a data retrieval, pattern matching, right? Not necessarily original thought, right? Because the current AI can best do what it has seen in training data. It can't go outside that aspect, right? So one aspect of intelligence is this original thought, something that new, novel, right? How do you think this is going to play out with the current limitation that your models are as good as your data?
Got it. Yeah, that's not an easy question or answer, actually. I think, like you said, today's original thought is driven and defined by the training data that went in. Sure, you can set temperature to 1 and 2 and 3 and, create hallucinations, but they are uncontrolled hallucinations. They're not kind of directed creativity, so to speak. It's uncontrolled, right? So I think there's a problem. I think we do need innovations in data classification, storage, retrieval. Like we spoke earlier, the brain is fantastic at all of this. We don't understand how that works so efficiently, so space efficiently, and so energy efficiently, right? Both. So I think there are huge advances to be made there. And perhaps there is something in the structure of the storage itself that enables, original thought to be easier than in our current architectures. Who knows, right? So we don't really know. And as a VC, we are looking at areas that could come in from the left field, so to speak, right? That are not directly in AI, but could help. For instance, say, something in quantum maybe might help with the way storage happens. Maybe AI processors with a new architecture. Maybe material sciences, nanotech, the way things are layered structurally, like that happened in hard disk storage. You had one dimensional, then two dimensional, then three dimensional, then three dimensional with multi-phase and all kinds of things, right? So maybe some material science advances, right? And then also, other areas, including space and cybersecurity. Space could be for, long-term storage of tribal knowledge in a secure mechanism in space, and, you beam up, beam down. So, we've seen quantum key distribution with satellite sort of stuff. Sometimes it's really James Bond technology, but you can't say no to anything because the world is changing so fast, right? So that's actually what we look at when we invest. These are the aspects that can directly, indirectly, and very, very indirectly help out with the data problem that we have. The data problem is multidimensional, so any any one dimension, if you solve, you're shrinking the problem dramatically. So we look at a lot of investments when you look at that. Yeah.
Wonderful. I know you have a lot of original thinking, so I'm trying to understand, can you give me one or more beliefs or thesis that you have in AI, which might be contrary to the popular belief?
Okay. Yeah. So it's more the contrary. So let me talk about the popular belief, right? AI is going to take over the world, right? So I'll see this on the family WhatsApp group maybe, or during a friendly conversation, or even somewhere else, right? Like, hey, I asked AI, are you going to take over the world, or how are you going to take over the world? And it said, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and it came out with a whole paragraph on what it's going to do. And I'm like, well, of course, you asked it a question, it gave you an answer, right? I mean, we've trained it on science fiction novels, we've trained it on literature that's been written, maybe even in non-fiction, right? Maybe the Soviets wrote some papers, maybe the Americans wrote, maybe the British wrote, the Indians wrote, Chinese wrote, French, who knows, right? We've trained this AI on all of these papers. And so when you ask a relevant question, it's going to search that body of knowledge and come up and stitch together an answer that best addresses the question you asked. So if you asked it, how will AI take over the world? Yeah, it will give you an answer. It doesn't mean it is sitting there planning to take over the world, right? So I try to explain to people, I try to dispossess this idea for the common man by saying, so imagine you had a search engine, right? Everyone's familiar with a search engine. So a search engine is a librarian that will go and put you in the right section of the library. Okay. And then you have to go through the shelves, the top 10 search results, the top shell, these are the 5 shelves, go look at it, right? You have to do the work yourself. AI is like a librarian that will select the top 5 books, blend them in, and present that book to you, right? And so it is a far superior search engine in some sense. Again, it is not a search engine. I'm just, simplifying things. But that is how that's how I kind of try to bridge the gap between the popular narrative that AI is trying to take over the world versus the really mundane explanation for why you get such an answer. It's a very boring answer, but so that's one big contrast between what I know or what I believe or what how it works versus what people think or they believe, right? So I hope that, yeah.
Definitely. Given your background of venture capital, right? I thought I'll spend some part of the podcast exploring that also, right? Ranjit, VC play kind of started in late 90s, 97, 98, right? Closer to the dot-com. Do you think the fundamental way in which the VCs operate has changed? Have there been anything new that has come in, or it's largely the same play? Of course, there's a better understanding of what works, what doesn't work over last, I would say, 27, 28 years. But is this largely the same play, or that too has undergone, or you see newer ways of doing that on the horizon? How is that
Got
part?
it. No, there are newer ways to doing it on the horizon, which venture driven, but maybe leaner venture capital. So for instance, right, what is venture capital? It is the money that you raise when you cannot get anybody else to back you, to bet on you, right? You can't go to a bank, friends and family can't raise enough money for you because they can only give you smaller sums. Banks can, but then they need collaterals, they need a proof of performance, they need all kinds of things. And grants can only take you so far. So then what you're left with is equity, which you sell, and you're not public, so you can't sell it on the public market. So you have to sell it in a private market. And that's where venture capital comes in, right? So it does serve a need. It has served it very well. I think what happens is when people want to raise money, they have to give up a part of the company. So that's the bad part of VC, that a founder has to give up a part of their company, right? But then the risk for the VC firm is very high. So in general, the mortality rate for startups in the VC world is close to 70, 75%. Okay. In fact, there's like a tribal saying in the VC community that if you do not have enough failures, that means you're not betting risky enough. Okay. Because really the you're not trying to get a 2x return. You're trying to get a 50x return. So that's what the VC world is driven by. Some of the numbers are skewed. Where AI is changing things is that the startups have to become leaner. Their budgets become smaller, so the checks don't need to be so large. So VCs have to take more bets, which is not a bad thing, but it's still a change in the nature of the business that we are perceiving. We haven't yet seen it, but we believe that it can come down the pipeline in the near future, right? So that's a big change in the VC world. Yeah. So that's what I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, and so sorry, but to add, right? I mean, so when you take money from a VC, yes, you're giving up a part of the company. Don't just take the money, right? Find out how he or she can help you connect, or help you with a sales, help you with a product definition. Like wherever the person can contribute, be open to that contribution, because you've already given up a part of your company. You might as well get the best deal you can for it. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Anuj.
I think you actually touched upon a point which is a right segment to the next question.
Okay.
Do you believe that this idea of operator-led model, where so in a VC world, typically you are raising the money, you are taking some help, but not very actively. VCs are often not very hands-on people, not deeply involved in a day-to-day functioning of an organization. It is largely left to the founding team and the founder's vision, right, to go about and execute them. This whole operator-led model is kind of a new way whereby you're not just getting in the money, but you're also getting in the expertise in a more active way, right? Do you see that that's going to be a more predominant trend in the future as opposed to the way it is operating today? Because in the valley, I already see lot and lot VCs and startups going that way. Two, the idea of not raising immediately, running the company in a bootstrap way for a fair amount of time until you really have solved some of the key aspects. And the only thing that's holding you back is the money part. And that is when you raise the VC money. So do you think both these undercurrents becoming
Got it.
predominant?
Yeah, so I'll discuss two separate points. The first is, I think the Bay Area VCs that I'm familiar with, right? Because I've worked there, done startups there, and things like that. The Bay Area VCs are largely folks who come from having built startups. So they have been operators and they intimately understand the play, and it's a very rich ecosystem. I think the India VC ecosystem is significantly financial driven. People with a financial background are involved, because there simply aren't that many operators, who've been around long enough, right? So that's one huge difference. The second is, there are certain firms that stick to a very specific rule, right? So there are certain very, very, very key, very well-known venture firms that refuse to get involved in any operations. Okay, but I would put it slightly differently. I would say, okay, again, and this is my personal opinion. So, so around, you have founders. You pick the strongest founders. They went to the right places. They studied the right things. They did the right things. They've got wonderful degrees, what have you, right? You've picked 100 of them. Even after that selection process, where the founders are great, the idea is great, there's a market, the unit economics look good, a bunch of everything looks good or decent or promising, 30% will fail. Okay, they will fail no matter what. 30% will succeed no matter what. Okay, and the intermediate 40% is where you can help, because the 30% who are going to fail are congenitally disinclined to listen to any VCs or advice or anything. Like, I know what I want to do, right? They've got blinders on, right? The the 30% who are going to succeed, they are far superior to us, any VC. They are the true spirit of entrepreneurship, the true flame of entrepreneurship, right? They are vastly superior to us. What can we do for them? There's nothing. Okay. And then the intermediate ones are the ones who are very smart, but they need help because they don't have the exposure, maybe, right? So we can help them. Hey, look at your sales funnel, look at your fundraise funnel. What does your product look like? Does it solve problems? Is there a market for this? So we can ask difficult questions and align them. And that's where an operator model could help such founders. But for the other two endpoints where they don't want to take any help, and the success ones where they don't really need help, I mean, it's okay to be hands off because you really are not going to affect any meaningful change out there. So it's a different way of looking at things, but that's what I would say.
But do you think that will become the predominant way of working going forward? Maybe in 3 years.
No, I actually think I think to do AI, people need external help, maybe. But from a venture capital perspective, because of the way AI is squeezing the budgets and reducing the budget need and the headcount need, startups are becoming smaller. The checks they need are smaller. So any fund of a given size needs to take more bets because the startups don't need more than a certain amount. And so you have more startups, and so you don't have enough time to get involved in everyone, right? So if you take a big bet, like, one of the best bets we've taken, maybe that's what we should talk about is, a fantastic bet, right? I want to be involved because it's super exciting. It's like the future of humanity sort of a bet, So yeah, that's the one. So I hope that answers.
And would you be open to talking on that?
Yeah. So let's do that. I think when we were talking earlier, we were talking about the memorable sort of pitches kind of a thing, right? So I think the most positive one for me is a company called Ethereal X, right? One of the best pitches I've seen. Highly, highly talented people, literal rocket scientists. They've got ground experience with Mars orbiter mission and Chandrayaan or things like that, right? So deep actual experience. They presented very well. And they have a razor sharp focus. They have a razor sharp communication, knowledge, vision, whatever you may call it, right? And so to know that there are people like this who are vastly superior in intellect, in thinking, in vision, in execution, who are much younger, by the way. So it's very, it's very heartwarming to know that, the future is in good hands. I think it's just fantastic. It's one of the best pitches I ever saw. The explanations I got, I spent 6 hours with them, right? Because I was so fascinated, and they allowed me to hang around for 6 hours and learn from them. Okay. That's how good these guys are. And they took interest in explaining to me and helping me understand why. It is very symbiotic. I think I learned a lot from them. And I hope, that it all works out very well. But those are really the kinds of bets that you can be very, very proud of, right? So like, you want to be involved, even if you're just a spectator. They might be flying the spaceship, but you want to at least see the launch, right? So it's very exciting to be involved with such smart people. So yeah.
And may I know what exact problem are they trying to solve?
Sure. So they are doing fully reusable space launch vehicles. So stage 1 and stage 2, they can retrieve both stage 1 and stage 2. And they're able to turn around in 72 hours and do a launch again. The target is to do 150 launches a year. Okay. And they have some design tricks. It's about when you go up in space, it's potential energy. You want to come down, you gain kinetic energy. You want to burn that energy off. You want to bleed it off. And so, they've got a lot of things, tricks up their sleeve, and they've figured some things out. There's innovation there. There's brains there. There's persistence. There's vision. There's a lot of good qualities out there. And I truly hope, they can bring about the change. We've been looking at them for a year. I mean, we've been working with them for a year. They've been on schedule for a year, So when you're building a space rocket and you're a scientist, I mean, it's pretty impressive, right? So I'm happy. Yeah.
Fantastic. Would love to meet them someday.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think more and more college kids are gonna not complete the education. We are already seeing this in US and jump into this startup world, because one of the big advantages that I've seen is that when you're young, if you can really grind in 10 years, what you can learn in 1 year of a startup would easily be compared to maybe 3, 5, or maybe more years at an MNC, where you're just a cog in the wheel. So do you
I
think
agree.
more and more people will go down this path?
Um, so I would recommend against that to some extent, because a founder is a very unique animal. Okay, he or she has to be an octopus, right? You have to be emotionally resilient. You have to be mentally resilient, right? And you have to work very, very hard, but also take care of your health. It's a lot of mixture of opposites, right? uh, you have to commit to a path, but you have to be flexible. So I don't think it's for everybody. Okay. I think the right person would significantly benefit, perhaps by leaving school early, or not completing their bachelor's or whatever they might want. But I think for the average person, if they were to take that jump, and remember, I said the mortality rate for a startup is 70% after getting funding, after coming from a Stanford or a IIM or a Yale or a IIT, or any Bombay University, Delhi, whatever, right? I think given how high the failure rate is, most of the people who jump into the startup world will see a failure, right? Because that's just the nature of the statistics. And then if they are not inclined, and if they fail because they're not inclined towards it, which is a very real reality, not everyone can be a founder, then their only way forward is to do a job for which they would need the degree, right? So I don't want to hype up startups to the point where people take that kind of a decision. I want to play the devil's advocate on both sides.
Right.
If you really are emotionally resilient, mentally resilient, you can carry conflicting ideas in your head and live a life that involves a lot of stresses, but also in a calm way. I think then you might be amenable to a founder's life. Okay. And of course, people learn. It's not like you have to be born that way. You people do learn on the, when there's fire, in the iron forge, so to speak, right? But if you're not built that way, it is impossible to succeed as a founder. Okay. Um, so I don't want to tell people what to do, but I would say that that's what you need to look at yours. Are you an octopus? Are you resilient? Can you carry conflicting ideas? Can you live with stress, but also, slow down when necessary, speed up? All of these things are the complex things that we look at also when we talk to founders and startups. So, yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. What is so the good part of building VC way of companies, right? We all understand. What is the not so good part of that?
Of going the VC way. You give up a part of your company, you give up a part of all future profits in that area, right?
So,
You have people on your board who will now tell you how to run a part of your company, right? It's not a requirement. Like we don't, like I said, most of the times we don't get involved. Sometimes we see something, we give advice. We don't really get involved, but yeah, we may give advice once in a while that, hey, look, this looks wrong, go check it out. If the entrepreneur wants to still do it the way they want, that's fine, right? But yeah, some other VC firms may get aggressive. So those are some of the negatives of VC. It's the most expensive way to raise money, right? If you've been operational for 3 years with a profit, even if it's bare minimum, and you can convince a bank to give you a debt, or even if there's venture debt, which is not as stringent as bank debt. Bank debt is senior debt, venture debt is more junior debt. I think those are easier ways to raise money. If you're small, grants may be a good way forward, right? Revenue is obviously the best way to have money coming in. So those are some of the negatives of a VC. But I think if you're starting a firm and you don't have the financial capability, there's very few options for somebody to bet on you when you don't have an established pedigree of having built a startup and your idea is new and vague and things like that. So it's a flip. It depends on how you want to look at it. Do you want to look at the glass as half empty or half full, right? So that's what I'd say.
So maybe last question, right? What advice would you give to a young high school student or a college student, right? We are on the brink of some crazy times. We have already discussed how the AIs and the quantums and all of this are going to change. What advice you yourself have two sons who will be in
Okay,
high school and
got
college,
it.
couple of years, right? What advice would you genuinely give to somebody where the mankind stands today?
Hmm. So we live in a human society. I think hopefully that will not change, right? Uh, Even with AI coming in, AGI. So the first and most important lesson I teach them is to be kind. Okay, it's like it's important. It's very important to be kind. And the other thing is we're trying to teach them how to learn. So they're learning how to learn. Okay, and to do things that they enjoy. Right. Of course, they have to do things that they don't enjoy. Because they're studying and things like that. But I think those are the 2-3 things. Beyond that, it's up to them. So as long as they're kind, as long as they're open to learning, and as long as they enjoy at least a part of their journey, we can't enjoy our journey 24/7, 365 and things like that. But at least something you should be doing that you enjoy, truly enjoy. And I think that's enough for them to have a fruitful life, career, things like that, right? So that's what we're hoping for, to simplify the message to them, because it's a very complicated world out there and it's getting much more complicated. So we're trying to really, really simplify the message for the two of them. And I hope they can continue taking that lesson forward into a world where, I can't even imagine what it'll be like 30 years from now. So,
Yeah.
so that's what I would advise everyone.
No, absolutely great message, Ranjit. Right. One of the things my advisor always told me is there's just one thing to be learned, how to learn
Uh,
it. If you
yeah,
can
yeah.
learn that part, then large part of things are sorted out. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like always, it's a pleasure talking to you. You always have a unique point of view, and that is what I enjoy the most talking to you. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to interacting more and more with you.
So, no, thank you, Anuj, for this opportunity. Lovely. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, bye bye.